Now for deadlifts, there's really only 3 options when it comes to equipment that you can use to perform the deadlift. And that comes into the variety of 3 different bars. There is the power bar, which is used in a lot of the all-natural federations like the USAPL, the federations that use a single bar for all 3 lifts, like a power bar for squat, bench, and deadlift. They don't change the bar out. They use the same bar throughout the entire lift. And then there is the Texas deadlift bar, which most powerlifting gyms will have. It is the bread and butter of powerlifting meets, the bar that they use on the majority of platforms. A Texas deadlift bar is what most people will use when performing the deadlift. So a lot of gyms have had these bars around for years and years because it's been around for years and years, and it's been a very consistent, a very high quality bar that most gyms are able to afford to get and utilize for deadlift. And then there's the new Kabuki deadlift bar. The Kabuki deadlift bar is coming onto the scene, and it is important to know what the difference between the Kabuki bar, Texas deadlift bar, and the power bar are for the deadlift, because they do affect the deadlift in different ways, and the different bar can dictate whether or not you have different PRs on the different bars, because there is a significant difference between the 3 bars. Now we have all 3 deadlift bars here. We have the Kabuki up front. Up next we have the Texas deadlift bar, and then we also have a power bar. The first thing that comes to note in the difference between the 3 bars is the length of the hub, the distance that the weight will sit in accordance to the center of the bar. If you notice, the Kabuki bar sits way further out. It's got the longest hub of all 3, and it sits the plates a little further than the Texas deadlift bar. The Texas deadlift bar still holds the weight further away than the power bar, which is the bar all the way at the left. The power bar, which has the shortest active bar length of the 3, whereas the Kabuki deadlift bar has the longest active part of the bar. Also, the hub length is different between the 3. The Kabuki deadlift bar has a shorter hub length than the Texas deadlift bar, and the power bar actually has a kind of shorter hub for the weight. So you can fit less weights on a power bar than you can on the Kabuki or Texas deadlift bar. Texas deadlift bar has the longest hub of them all. The next thing to note is the location of the rings. On the Kabuki bar, the ring is here. On the Texas deadlift bar, the ring is a little further out. And on the power bar, the ring is at the same distance as the Texas deadlift bar. So the ring length point where you're going to set up is going to be different according to the ring length on the Kabuki deadlift bar versus a Texas deadlift bar, where the Texas deadlift bar has the ring length further out closer to the hub of the bar as opposed to the Kabuki deadlift bar. You can set up the same on the Texas deadlift bar and the power bar because the ring length is the same distance from the center. The Kabuki bar is a variant on that. The biggest difference between the 3 different bars, the power bar, the Texas deadlift bar, and the Kabuki bar, is the amount of whip that the bar has. This is the amount of slack that the weight on the sides of the bar is going to give before it leaves the ground. The Ohio power bar, or the generic power bar, is also known as a stiff bar because it doesn't have that much give. I have all 3 different types of bars loaded up with 315 here to kind of demonstrate the difference in whip. There isn't going to be much whip at 315 pounds. The more weight that you add to the bar, the more noticeable the whip is. Once you get up to the 700-pound range, then it becomes a noticeably different in the amount of whip that the bar has. So the first bar that we have here is the Ohio power bar. Notice that if I jiggle it at all, it doesn't really whip at all. Next up, I have the Texas deadlift bar, which is a little softer than the power bar. It's the go-to for a lot of meet directors and powerlifting because it's the most available bar. So a lot of people are able to compete with the Texas deadlift bar. If you notice, I can jiggle it a little bit, and it's got a little bit of whip there. And that's the whip that I'm talking about. And then the last bar here is the Kabuki deadlift bar. It is the softest of all the bars. It also has the longest active bar length of all the bars. So the weights are more distributed further away from the center, so it gets a lot more whip in it. You can see I can jiggle it, and it gets a fair amount of jiggle. And that's the biggest difference between the 3 bars.